Antarctica is the coldest and most restricted place on Earth, a continent buried under ice that in some places is more than 4 kilometers thick. No cities, no roads, no permanent population. Only scientists are allowed here, and even they can only access a fraction of it. But despite the isolation, despite the extreme conditions, there are parts of Antarctica that remain completely off limits. No explanation, no public records, just silence. So what exactly is hidden beneath the ice? And why have some discoveries here been labeled classified? Because in recent years, something was found, something that didn't fit. Antarctica doesn't belong to any one country. Instead, it's governed by international agreements. Dozens of nations operate research stations across the continent. They study climate change, ice movement, ancient ecosystems locked beneath frozen layers. But not everything they discover is released to the public. Some data is delayed, some images are altered, and some findings are never mentioned again. So what makes this place so important? Why spend billions studying a frozen desert where almost nothing survives? And more importantly, what are they really looking for? In 2018, a satellite captured an image over a remote region of East Antarctica. At first, nothing seemed unusual, just endless ice, cracks, frozen ridges shaped by wind and time. But then analysts noticed something strange. Partially buried beneath the ice, there was a formation, large, geometric, and unlike anything around it. The structure stretched for nearly 2 kilometers. Its edges were sharp, its shape almost symmetrical. At first, it was dismissed, a glitch in the image, a shadow distortion, a trick of light across uneven terrain. But when additional satellite passes confirmed it, that explanation no longer worked. Researchers took a closer look. The formation wasn't random. It had defined angles, straight lines, patterns that didn't match natural ice behavior. At first, scientists suggested it could be a rare geological feature, a coincidence formed by pressure and time. But there was a problem. The symmetry was too precise. Glaciers don't carve perfect shapes. Ice doesn't fracture in clean lines. And yet, that's exactly what the data was showing. Some experts proposed it could be the result of an ancient meteor impact. Others pointed to unusual rock formations beneath the ice. But none of the explanations fully matched what was seen. So the question remained, what exactly was it? And that's when things started to escalate, because this wasn't the first anomaly recorded in Antarctica. Far from it. Across the continent, satellite imagery has captured other unusual formations, massive structures hidden beneath layers of ice, strange ridges that appear almost artificial, and mountain-like shapes that look surprisingly familiar. Some of these formations resemble pyramids, not perfect, but close enough to raise questions. 4 sides, defined edges, angles that seem too consistent to ignore. Of course, scientists have an explanation: natural erosion, wind patterns shaping exposed rock over millions of years. But others aren't convinced, because similar formations appear in multiple locations, with similar proportions, similar alignment, and similar symmetry. Coincidence? Or something else? Then something unexpected happened. Ice core drilling nearby revealed unusual data. Layers of ice, disturbed in a way that didn't match natural compression. Instead of random patterns, there were signs of structured pressure, as if something massive had been buried beneath. The deeper the samples went, the stranger the results became. Temperature inconsistencies, unusual density variations, and traces of materials not typically found in that environment. At first, it seemed insignificant, but when compared with satellite imagery, it raised a new possibility. What if these formations weren't just surface-level anomalies? What if they were connected to something much larger beneath the ice? Around the same time, researchers revisited historical data, old maps, early exploration records, fragments of information that had been largely ignored, and one document stood out. the Piri-Reis map. Created in 1513, long before Antarctica was officially discovered, and yet it appears to show a landmass at the southern edge of the world, one that closely resembles Antarctica. But there's one detail that makes it even stranger. It shows the continent without ice. How could that be possible? How could a map created centuries ago depict a frozen continent as if it had once been exposed? Some researchers believe the map was based on older sources, knowledge passed down from civilizations we no longer understand. Others say it's just coincidence, a misinterpretation. But if it's not, then it changes everything. Because it suggests one thing: Antarctica hasn't always been frozen. Scientific evidence supports this idea. Fossilized plants, ancient soil layers, traces of rivers and forests buried beneath ice, all pointing to a time when Antarctica was warmer, habitable, alive. But that leads to a much bigger question. If life once existed there, what else might have existed? And more importantly, what happened to it? Because whatever existed in Antarctica is now buried under kilometers of ice, preserved, hidden, and slowly being uncovered. Scientists have already discovered something extraordinary beneath the surface: a massive subglacial body of water, completely sealed off from the outside world for millions of years. It's called Lake Vostok, and it lies beneath nearly 4 kilometers of solid ice. Isolated, untouched, a world beneath the world. Some believe it could contain life forms never seen before, organisms that evolved in complete isolation, in total darkness. But exploring it is risky, because once it's opened, there's no way to reverse it. And that's where things get even more unsettling, because some researchers believe Lake Vostok isn't the only thing hidden beneath Antarctica. There could be more, much more. Because Lake Vostok isn't just a single anomaly, it's part of a much larger system. Beneath Antarctica, scientists have identified over 400 subglacial lakes, hidden under kilometers of ice, completely sealed off. Some connected, some isolated, all unexplored. At first, they were seen as scientific curiosities, natural reservoirs formed by pressure and heat. But that assumption started to change, because radar scans began revealing something unexpected: not just water, but empty spaces, vast cavities beneath the ice, some stretching for kilometers, others forming interconnected networks, too structured to ignore. At first, scientists believed they were natural voids, created by melting and refreezing cycles. But the data didn't fully match. Some of these spaces showed unusual geometry, smooth boundaries, consistent shapes, almost as if they had been formed intentionally. And then something even more unusual appeared: long, linear formations beneath the surface, stretching across vast distances. They didn't curve like natural tunnels. They didn't branch randomly. They ran straight, intersecting at angles, connecting different regions beneath the ice, almost like pathways. At first, it sounded impossible, because nothing should exist beneath Antarctica like that. No infrastructure, no known system. And yet, the patterns kept appearing across different scans, different regions, different research teams. That's when attention shifted to another region, one that had already raised concerns decades earlier: Wilkes Land. Beneath this area lies a massive anomaly, a depression nearly 500 kilometers wide, hidden under thick layers of ice. Scientists believe it could be the result of an ancient impact, a massive asteroid striking Earth millions of years ago. But here's the problem: the shape of the anomaly doesn't fully match typical impact craters, and the surrounding data shows signs of something else: unusual gravitational readings, subtle magnetic interference, and temperature variations that don't align with known models. At first, these were dismissed as minor inconsistencies, but when combined, they formed a pattern. And that pattern suggested one thing: there may be something beneath Wilkes Land that hasn't been fully identified. Something massive.
And possibly not entirely natural. Meanwhile, satellite imagery continued to reveal more anomalies: perfectly straight ice fractures, rectangular icebergs breaking away from shelves, shapes that looked engineered. Of course, scientists provided explanations: natural stress fractures, ocean currents, thermal expansion. But again, the patterns didn't fully match. Because nature rarely creates perfect lines, especially not repeatedly. And that's when the conversation began to shift from isolated anomalies to a connected system. What if these structures, these voids, these patterns were all part of something larger? Something buried beneath the ice, something ancient, or something we don't yet understand. Then came another layer to the mystery: restricted zones. Areas of Antarctica that are rarely discussed. Regions where access is limited, even for researchers. No clear explanation, no public documentation, just coordinates and silence. Some of these areas align with known anomalies, satellite irregularities, unusual readings. At first, it seemed like coincidence. But the more data that was analyzed, the less random it looked. And then came the reports. Unconfirmed, but persistent. Pilots flying over remote sectors describing strange formations beneath the ice, shadows that didn't match terrain, shapes that appeared structured. At first, it sounded like misinterpretation, optical illusion. But multiple reports described similar observations from different flights, different years. And then something unexpected happened. Some of those locations were later marked as restricted. Coincidence or reaction? Because by now, the pattern was becoming harder to ignore. The formations, the underground cavities, the restricted zones, the missing data, all pointing to the same possibility: that something exists beneath Antarctica that hasn't been fully revealed, and maybe was never meant to be. Because the deeper scientists look, the more inconsistencies they find. Data that doesn't fully align, structures that don't behave naturally, signals that suggest something hidden. And that brings us back to the original discovery: the geometric formation detected in 2018. Was it just an anomaly, or the first visible sign of something much larger beneath the ice? Because if even part of this is true, then Antarctica isn't just a frozen continent. It's something else entirely. A place where Earth's history may not be what we think it is. And whatever is hidden there is slowly being uncovered. Whether we're ready or not. Whether we're ready or not. Because Antarctica is changing, slowly, almost silently, but constantly. Ice that has remained frozen for millions of years is beginning to shift, crack, collapse. And with every movement, something new is revealed. Small fragments at first, unusual formations, exposed rock, patterns that don't quite make sense. But then larger anomalies begin to appear, structures that weren't visible before, shapes that seem out of place. At first, they're explained: natural erosion, glacial movement. But the data doesn't always agree, because as the ice retreats, more of these formations begin to emerge, not randomly, but in clusters. And that's where things become difficult to ignore. Because random anomalies don't usually cluster together. Patterns do. And when patterns appear, they suggest structure, which raises a much bigger question. Are we looking at isolated discoveries or fragments of something much larger? Because if these formations are connected,
then they may not be natural at all. And that possibility changes everything. Some researchers have started to consider a theory once dismissed entirely, that Antarctica may have once been home to something far more complex than we imagined. Not just wildlife, not just vegetation, but organized structures, possibly even a lost civilization. At first, the idea sounds extreme, but when you combine all the evidence, ancient maps showing ice-free land, buried formations with geometric precision, subglacial cavities that resemble networks, it becomes harder to dismiss completely. Because history, as we understand it, is based on what we've been able to uncover, and Antarctica has barely been explored. Less than a fraction of the continent has been directly studied. The rest remains hidden, locked beneath layers of ice that have preserved whatever lies below for millions of years. And preservation changes everything, because unlike other parts of the world where time erodes and destroys, Antarctica keeps things intact, frozen, untouched, waiting. Which means if something existed there, there's a chance it's still there, not visible, not accessible, but preserved. And now, slowly being revealed. But there's another layer to this, because if something significant is being uncovered, why isn't more of it being shared? Why are certain regions restricted? Why is some data incomplete? And why do some discoveries seem to disappear as quickly as they appear? At first, it could be explained: scientific caution, incomplete data. But when the pattern repeats, it raises doubt. Because by now, this isn't just about one discovery. It's about a series of discoveries, all pointing in the same direction, towards something hidden beneath the ice, something that doesn't fully match our understanding of Earth's history, and something that may already have been found, but not fully revealed. Because if there's one thing that's clear, Antarctica is not empty, not in the way we once believed. It's a place filled with unanswered questions, hidden systems, and possibly hidden structures. So what was the discovery that started all of this? A geometric formation seen from space? Or the first visible piece of something much larger? Because if these anomalies are connected, then what we're seeing now might only be the surface, and whatever lies beneath it could be far more significant than anyone expected. Something ancient, something preserved, something hidden for a reason. And as the ice continues to melt, that reason may not stay hidden forever. So the real question isn't just what's under Antarctica. It's this: how much of it has already been discovered and never made public? Because in a place where almost everything is concealed, the most important discoveries might be the ones we never hear about. And if that's true, then Antarctica isn't just a frozen continent. It's a vault of Earth's forgotten past, and possibly something we were never meant to find. What exactly is buried beneath the ice right now? We don't have that answer yet. But the deeper we look, the clearer it becomes. Antarctica is hiding something. And whatever it is, we're getting closer to it. If you're interested in mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe, because some of the biggest discoveries in history haven't been fully revealed yet. And Antarctica may be the place where everything changes.